Hello and welcome to PMI's Uncommon Sense podcast, tools to improve your work forever. I'm Susanna Clark, Managing Partner with PMI, the performance improvement consulting and training firm. Our Uncommon Sense podcast is a 15-minute conversation with our expert consultants. They talk a lot of common sense, although much of it is not common practice. And that's what this podcast is all about. We want you to be inspired to improve your business through learning more about the tools which can help you succeed and grow. Hello, everyone. Today I'm back in the studio with Damion Albinson. Great to have you with me today, Damo.
Thank you for having me back.
Oh, you're very welcome. We're going to talk about operational definitions today. Now, I know from my own background, before any contact with PMI, this really wasn't something that I'd ever really come across. Nobody asked me about what's the operational definition of anything. So I think it would be really good just to start with, let's just be clear what operational definitions are.
Yeah, sure. I totally agree. I'd be the same. And it's quite an unusual term, isn't it? It's not something you come across in everyday life, I suppose. But certainly when you get into business improvement, at some level of training, you'll start to come into this subject. And it's really down to, I suppose, if we simplified it, understanding the meaning of words. And if we broaden that out to why might that be, necessary in certain situations? Well, if you're trying to understand what a customer requires, which is a massive part of Lean and Six Sigma, that it's vital that once we've captured what they've said they value, is that we somehow then make sure that we've got the right understanding of that. And this whole thing about understanding it is so it can lead us to the point where we can measure it, or measure it better, or measure it in a way that's meaningful back to the person that gave us the words. But I think that beyond that, it's got many other uses. So for instance, if you're trying to specify what you want your supplier to provide you, whether that's an internal or external supplier, then it becomes really useful for that. And in fact, just in everyday communication with one another, we use words all the time, but there's such an opportunity for misunderstanding and meanings to get distorted. So I thought it was worth spending a little bit of time talking about it.
Yeah. So operational definitions, great for, I think, removing ambiguity. And then, as you say, creating a common understanding that also then enables you to measure.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah,
all right.
I totally agree with
that. Got it. Thank you. Excellent. So, Damion, let's talk more about then. So if you can just help us understand the approach that you would take with operational definitions.
Well, the first thing is identify who your customers are. If we take that approach, and there's lots of tools and techniques that can help us do that, and then you have to capture what it is the customer really values. And that's usually done either through observation or through some kind of form of interview or survey. So you're going to capture sort of some level of data, which is probably going to be qualitative. It's going to be words and phrases. I want this delivery on time. I want your reports to be accurate. And we use those kinds of words. And I think the next part for operational definition then is to go back and really try to find where could the assumptions lay in those words. So for instance, if I said, I want something delivering on time, what does on time really mean? Now you could say, well, it means by 12 o'clock on Friday. Okay, but what happens at 12 o'clock on Friday? So is it that, I don't know, if I've ordered something online, is it that the postman has put a slip through my door to say they've attempted the delivery? Is it that the package is now physically in my hands? Is it that I've opened the package and confirmed that the delivery is the right thing? What's the definition of delivered, and what's the definition of on time? So it's going back and I suppose, exploring, in this case with the customer, here's my assumption about what you were trying to communicate, and giving them an opportunity to come back and say, no, that's not really what I meant.
Yes. And a bit as you said, also a bit more about understanding. I mean, an example might be you talked about, I want it, by 12 o'clock on Friday, and we asked the question, so why is that important? Well, it's because we shut at 12:30.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's got to be here by 12, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And those might, as you say, might be things that we don't even know, and help us understand what the boundaries are.
Absolutely. And if we were to go ahead and measure and start measuring our performance on the strength of these assumptions, we might start believing that the data is telling us that we're moving closer to the ideal, in this case for the customer. Yet next time we engage that customer, they're still dissatisfied with the product or service because we failed to really understand the meaning of what they were trying to communicate. So yeah, I think the approach is to, certainly with internal customers, and most practitioners would be dealing with processes that serve, other internal processes. I think this is a case of just spending that time after perhaps engaging with customers to go back and then re-understand and actually, I think a good habit is to play back. Okay, you've given me this information. This is what I believe you meant by it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that correct? And then there's an opportunity for them to come back and clarify.
Yes. And it also seems that there is an opportunity to do this the other way around. I'm quite conscious of people who I receive goods from, let's say. They tell me what they mean by it will be delivered on Tuesday, and the delivery slot is, and they're very clear what that is. So again, they've worked quite carefully, it feels, to be really clear to the customer ahead.
Yeah, I think a lot of businesses have done more work on it with that regard. But sometimes you see that there's things that can't be directly measured. That's where operational definitions also starts to become quite interesting. What if, for instance, I don't know, a request from us as a provider was that our service is nice or friendly? How on earth do we even begin to measure that? And that's another, I suppose, dimension of operational definitions that says we might need to find substitute measures that maybe can't directly measure that characteristic, but can get somewhere close to it. And again, I think the chance for us to get that wrong is quite wide. And I think you've got to work with whoever it is, the supplier, the customer, your boss, to just tidy up and say, well, okay, this is how we were going to approach measuring that. Would that be a good representation of your definition of, in this case, I think I've used the term value. So it can get really, really fascinating. And there's lots and lots of techniques and methods that can find their way through this kind of network of different steps.
And can you just give us some examples of that? Some of the different
so one technique we cover that maybe a lot of our audience would be familiar with is based on a concept called a CTQ tree, so a critical to quality tree. And what you're doing there is you're breaking down, in this case, the words used and starting to put some definitions around them. So, for instance, on time, you might say, well, what does that mean? It means by 12 o'clock on Friday, is the example we give. How would you measure that? What would the actual measurement be? What would the criteria be for a okay, not okay scenario? When is it considered late? 1 minute past, 10 minutes late, a day late? And it just helps us to break that. It almost prompts us to go and fill in those voids where the assumptions might have otherwise crept in.
Yes, and makes it less loose.
Yeah,
doesn't it? Otherwise, some of these things, as you say, they're sort of assumed there's a level of looseness, and different people will believe different things within the system. So getting that back to your point, the beginning about getting that alignment with everybody.
Indeed, absolutely. And of course, this is the sorts of things that on a contractual sort of end of the business, it can become, almost down into legal matters where something's failed and there's a disparity between what the contract really meant when it used certain terminology. So I think that this, yes, it's great for, the concept of making processes aligned to customers and what they value, but there's so many more use cases for it, I think, outside of that, just in everyday management, and everyday communication. So yeah, I think that it's a good habit to get into. I think is just to start to question, what's the shared understanding between words and phrases between a supplier and a customer, or just between two people.
Okay. And any hints or tips that you can suggest that people need to think about?
So there's some formal stages of business improvement where it would definitely want to be applied. So of course, converting voice of the customer into measures would be one, but defining supplier specifications could be another. And also where you have interactions between different processes or teams, which is normally one and the same. Wherever there's a handover point or a handoff point in a process, I think that's where operational definitions are best served, because it's those points that are usually the opportunity for too many assumptions to be around for it to be effective. So I think that would be a good starter for 10.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Damion. Really interesting and great to be talking to you about this. Thank you so much for joining us. You can find more episodes of our Uncommon Sense Tools to Improve Your Work Forever in our Knowledge Hub on our website, or, of course, your favourite podcast platform. And do subscribe so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check out the show notes for this episode, where you'll find links to more content on this topic, which includes webinar recordings, toolbox guides, blogs, and infographics, and our training page. You can always drop us a line on team@pmi.co.uk and arrange a time to have a call to talk about how these tools can help you in your organisation. We'd really love to hear from you.